All right. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on what time zone you're in. Today, I can't believe it. It's Thursday, February 3rd, 2022. And this is On the Fly with Kai, a great show. It's our 52nd episode where we give you tips, tricks, and hacks for entrepreneurs. And today, I'm super excited because I'm going to bring to you a gal from my network. And we were just commenting about how long ago we met. We met, I kid you not, in about '09 networking. And I've seen a ton of iterations of her incredible coaching to the point now where, she's definitely focusing on health and intuitive coaching, but just an incredible well. She does so many different modalities. I love the fact that she loves yoga and all about the whole you. And so I'm just super thrilled to be able to bring to you to the show right now. Lana, how you doing, sweetie?
Hey, Kai. It's great to be with you. I'm doing pretty well. Thank you so much for having me on your show. And I'm excited to talk with you and your listeners.
Absolutely. And I am just, I love everything entrepreneur. And so I always want to know how people got started on their path and their journey, because sometimes I feel like if we would have zigged and zagged, we would have missed it, just like some of our relationships, which we're going to talk about that as well. So was it an accidental entrepreneur thing, or did you always know you wanted to be one?
It was actually a little bit accidental. So, way back in the day here in California, I had a massage studio on the peninsula. And while that was good and fun, I quickly realized, I couldn't leverage my time as so much that way. So I moved into doing coaching and got into doing life and leadership coaching. And then, as you know, my first niche was supporting people through divorce. And that was back in '09, 2010. So I really enjoyed that niche at the time. And it was, in part, um, supported by the fact that I had been going through a divorce as well, unfortunately. My first book, The Alchemy of Divorce, I, quickly kind of grew out of talking about divorce. And then not the best place to be all the time. So I moved into doing leadership coaching in tech companies here in the Bay Area.
Well, and I know your background too. You had a little bit of HR back there. And so that was kind of a natural fit for you, right? To go in there and do that.
Yeah. So I had a huge background in facilitation, and I took my facilitation skills, moved into training and talent development. HR is in alignment with leadership development as well. So I've been product oriented on product teams in the Bay Area, and I've also been on talent teams here in the Bay Area. So I fully understand, I would say, the energy that teams are struggling with, the constraints, the timelines, the need to be agile, all of that work. I've been on those teams and fully understand all that.
Absolutely.
It's still a tough world.
It really is. And I love that you always coach on things that you've actually done. So I know, you went through the divorce, then you could help others, then you've kind of changed. And then now you've pivoted again because you did well on your health journey and lost some weight and are now coaching that too. So I love the fact that you walk the walk and talk the talk. So that's exciting.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, that's part of it, right? So during my early coaching days, I had a coach at my coaching school who challenged me to go and sign up for an a-thon. And I'm like, what's an a-thon? I had no clue, right? Well, so the challenge was to go home and sign up for like a half marathon or something like that. And so my homework assignment that very night during coaching school was to go and walk 6 miles. So this is, over 10 years ago. I had no clue that I could go out and walk 6 miles, but I did it. And I came back to class the next day and I said, look, I did this 6 miles. And so I went home that weekend. I signed up for a half marathon. And then I got into doing half marathons. And from there, I got a flyer in the mail to do a triathlon. I started doing triathlons. And my daughter even joined me. We finished a couple of triathlons together. So it's great to be engaged in those athletic pursuits because you see how you can stretch yourself, right? And so this is the link I want to make, right? It's about stretching yourself and seeing what you can do. I had no clue that I could be a runner until my daughter was out there with me in a half marathon and she was ahead of me. And so I had to start running to keep up with her, right? And then I was like, oh my gosh, I can do this. I had no clue. So that kind of leads me to the health coaching, which I'm doing now. So during the whole time I was doing triathlons, I was not reducing my weight at all, which was one of my goals. But guess what? You have to eat to do the training for all these events, right? So it wasn't until I got into a specific structured program during COVID, I was like, I'm going to lose some of this extra weight that I've got here. And I need to be able to do it while I'm also engaged in exercise because my body just loves exercise. So I found a structured program through a girlfriend, hopped on. I got coaching, which is key for me for accountability. I got community, and I started to change my thinking through healthy habits and studying these healthy habits in my community. So now I've turned around and I'm doing health coaching for other people and walking alongside them on their journey. The great thing about coaching, you don't have to know everything. You just have to be 2 steps ahead of the people that you're coaching, no matter the niche, right?
Understood. And it's important, right? Because if you feel good, you're going to do better in your business for sure. So that's huge.
Yes.
And then, so I also want to spend some time on there because you've also, so you've, done a pivot from the divorce thing to, of course, leadership to now you pivoted again in COVID to the health thing. And, but in that time frame, I know we talked a lot about your intuitiveness and how did that come about? Like, I'm so intrigued by, like, you talked about Akashic Records and all that. So how did you come into that? How did you know you had that skill set, or does everybody have that skill set?
So I do believe that everybody has the skill set. It's a matter of focusing on it and developing it, gaining confidence in the skill set. So I've had a relationship with my intuition since I was in my 20s. So while I was in my 20s, you would find me giving talks on metaphysics at my local events, right, at the library, etc. I was doing tarot readings at the mall, right, in my early 20s. And then I'm like, I don't think this is going to create, the financial structure that I'm looking for in my life. So I kind of just dabbled in it along the way. And then, and so about 10 years ago, again, I brought the tools back out and I started doing some readings, primarily for friends and, people I knew here in the Bay Area. And then during COVID, one of those friends called me up. She said, the reading you gave me 10 years ago was spot on. I need your support again. And I said, of course, I'm happy to do another reading for you. And so we did a series of several readings, and that was great. And I decided, like, during COVID, my biggest grief and upset I can remember at the beginning of lockdown was understanding that people were leaving the planet without being able to properly say goodbye and process, right, this closure, this transition on both sides. So then all of a sudden you have zillions of people here on the planet who are left grieving without healing. And you have these souls who've crossed over that, well, I don't exactly know what happens over there. I can tell you a little bit about that, but they don't have proper closure either. So I decided, and let me back up one step, in 2001, so 20 years ago, I had a near-death experience.
Wow.
And that near-death experience brought me back into my body through the tunnel of light. Right? Like I came screaming back into my body after a grand mal seizure. And it took me a year to recover. But the biggest gift that came out of that was my intuitive senses were heightened. And so then now during COVID, I've been, pretty much spirit has guided me into action saying, look, lady, this is your last chance. You need to be using these gifts. So, okay, yes, I accept. So the intuitive work is, it comes pretty naturally to me. I'm pretty intuitive. I have clairaudience, clairvoyance, clairsentience. I mean, there's so many different clairs, and I'm happy to support people in understanding, what are your gifts and how can you move forward with them. I think taking classes is a great thing because that's where we get to talk about them with other people and see how we're all kind of normal. And then we get to use the skills and develop that confidence. And that's what I started doing during COVID. I took some classes. I worked with Julie Hawkins on Akashic Records. I took her class. That was a great learning. And then I did some other classes. Lisa Fry, who I found through Meta. And she's just a great resource. So using these resources, I started on my own journey again of providing intuitive readings for people. So,
Wow. Yeah, we've had Julie on the show before, the business psychic. So, how does that parlay if someone were, struggling in an area of their life? What is an Akasha and how does that work? So let's say they have trouble in their
yeah,
business and
yeah,
they're thinking a couple things, like maybe their partner in business, passed, or maybe they're struggling with, clients or letting go or whatnot. How would the intuitive piece on that help them? And what is an Akasha record? People don't know what
yeah. So
that
let's
is.
start with that, right? What are the Akashic Records? So the Akashic Records are basically the big book of life. And it's even in the Bible, right? So a myriad number of people believe in this Akashic Records. It's basically a big library where every thought and action that your soul has is recorded. And so you can go into this Akashic Records library. So it's basically like walking into a library, and you can access information through your guides and your teachers that will support you in moving forward. So when I was going to take this class with Julie, I read the book that she suggested, and then in the book there's instructions for how to access. And again, I'm pretty intuitive, so I sat down and I accessed my Akashic Records. And honestly, I had this experience of feeling like finally I am at home. It was overwhelming, and I started crying, right? Because it's
Wow.
like this huge acceptance, right? It's like your soul's longing for knowing, right, that everything's working out just as it should, right? And then B, right, there are some answers here. And so other people have used the Akashic Records, I know, when they're dealing with huge times of grief, maybe to access the records. And it's just a place where you can access your teachers, your loved ones, and they'll just really support you in feeling better. You can go in and ask specific questions, right? Around, well, how do I move forward around finding clients for my business, for example?
Wow. What's the name of the book in case anybody's curious?
Yes, I will have to look that up. It's
Okay, no
probably
problem. You
Akashic
can go back
Records.
and put it in the chat afterwards and in the,
Okay.
on the chat there. Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, that is so interesting. I mean, I know this is all boils down to one of your favorite subjects, which is relationships, right?
Yeah.
So, and being authentic in those relationships, and how do these like different modalities from the, your intuitive side uh, work? So how does that work to heal those relationships and help people move forward in their life and their business?
Yes. So I have to say, during COVID, the biggest trend that I've seen in my practice is people coming to me with questions around how do I heal these relationships with, for example, my parents, right? Whether they're living or they've crossed over. People are wanting to get clear about being fully harmonious in these relationships. They may not always agree on everything, but they want to be at peace with them because so many of our elderly have been choosing this time to leave the planet, for example. So, through the intuitive work, right, there are ways that you can go in and access past lives that you've had with people, uh, you know, your relationships, right, your family relationships, for example. You can also, I think, through mediumship, right, which is another thing that I offer, you can have healing by talking to these loved ones that have crossed over. And oftentimes they'll explain, hey, it might have looked like I wasn't ready to leave, but from a soul's perspective, it was my time, my work was done. And that's often, I think, what we find when people cross over before a certain age, right? We're very sad here on earth, and that was part of my story. My father was 58 when he passed, and so I was in my mid 20s, which that's pretty young to be losing a father, right? So I understand all of that grief, and I'm able to really help people walk through and find closure. And when you find healing in your own energy system, that's what frees us up to be able to have energy and drive for the other parts of our life that are calling, right? Because we all know, life calls, right?
Yeah. Wow. So I love that the mediumship and all that stuff. And so I asked you a question before we started. Do you think you were born that way, or did you learn? I mean, does everybody have it? So would love to dive into that just for a hot second.
Sure. I do believe that everybody has some psychic and intuitive skills. It's a matter of, I think, when we're children, did we shut them down because the people around us, were not going to support them? Or if we have, for example, an intuitive mother or father who supported that type of energy work, then we may have stayed open to it. So I do believe that everybody has the ability. And then but to live in this world, we pretty much bring forward our ego to be really strong, to support us in getting through the day, and then making money, being out in the world, right? It takes a lot of effort. So we, can shut that down. I find one of the best practices for me to support my intuitive work is a regular meditation practice where I quiet my mind and quiet that monkey mind. And I learn to discern, what are my crazy thoughts? Now, tell me you don't think I have crazy thoughts, right? But what are the crazy thoughts versus, what are my angels saying to me, right? What am I being guided towards in my life? So, developing that meditation practice where you can discern and quiet your mind. So that the truth is, all meditation is not about having no mind, because you can't have no mind, right? We all have a mind. It's the funniest thing. But it's just simply about quieting the mind.
Yeah, I think every person I've interviewed on here always talks about that. And I think I said last time how Jack Canfield interviewed all these billionaires, and there was only three things they have in common. They exercised every day, they got up before 5 a.m., and every single one of them meditated. So this is a sign, everybody, figure it out.
I'm doing good on 2 out of 3. I don't get up before 5 every day.
I don't either, woman. I'm like, no, can't do it. But I have a new dog, so maybe not an option.
Oh, how fun.
So, what are some great resources if they want to develop meditation or learn about it? Do you have any great tips or resources for folks?
Yes. So on YouTube, there's all kinds of groups that are meditating together. There's a group, I think it's the Upaya group down in New Mexico, that meditates every day. There's a TM group that meditates every day. There's a group from Redwood City that is meditating regularly. So I would say, there are Christian groups that meditate, doing centering prayer through Mercy Center in Burlingame. I find that group to be very resourceful. I have a Buddhist group that I meditate with for happy hour on Fridays.
Wow.
And that's doing like insight meditation, and that's been very helpful as well. So they can, check out YouTube or reach out to me, and I can, kind of point people in a direction that's in alignment with their spiritual background.
Got it. Love it. And I know you're on Facebook, and I'll put your website. I might as well just do it right now because we're right here talking about it. So I usually do this at the end, but for those of you who are watching the show, it's just simply hername.com. So you can check that out and reach out for questions about that as well. So very cool. Great. We'll put that up again at the end as well. So I know when we chatted, you have some interesting modalities that you can help people. So one is the intuitiveness. So if you're struggling in business or relationships, right, we can tap into that. But you also have color mirror, and
Yes.
this is really new to a lot. It was new to me, never heard of it, and I thought I'd heard it all. But I'd love for you to share what is that all about? Yeah, perfect.
Yes, absolutely. So yes, I do enjoy a lot of different modalities. I mentioned that I did massage back in the day. And from there, I was trained in Reiki. I was trained in hypnotherapy, got my master's in transpersonal psychology. And then invariably, like during COVID, I was at this kind of still point between like, okay, how am I going to move forward in my life? I'm an empty nester. I got some decisions to make. So I connected with a woman, Deborah Hubers Parody, and she connected me with the color mirrors system. And I had been connected to her for about 10 years. And so this system is like a spiritual boot camp when you start working with it. So I'm holding up one bottle here. As you see, this is a color mirrors transformational bottle. This is a 2-colored bottle, as you can see. And the system itself, there's over 50 bottles. It's all about using color to heal from bringing from the subconscious, which is the bottom layer, into the conscious mind. And it's bringing this color to heal this color. And so, for example, lilac is all about compassion and mothering, right? And then pink is also about love. So here's an example of another bottle that's good for people that are grieving, for example. So it's about bringing this platinum color into our grief. So the system was developed in 2007 by Melissa Jolly in South Africa. She basically downloaded this system. The bottles themselves are made up of color, as you can see, oil, water, and some fragrance. And what we do is we shake the bottles and then pour half of it in a bath. And then a couple days later, you end up bathing in the rest of the bottle. And as I mentioned, there's a bottle called Forgiveness. And so I'll tell that story of how I've been through my own divorce, and I bathed in the Forgiveness bottle within the last 18 months. And I had this spontaneous healing right there in the bathtub where I felt this loving gratitude for my ex-husband.
Wow.
Now, doesn't mean that I went and called him, right? No, right? But it freed up energy for me around the male relationships in my life by finding forgiveness for him and for myself.
Wow. And I just think it's really interesting. And I know your website will eventually have those bottles on there
Yes.
and whatnot and what they're all about. You also, I love the spiritual boot camp. So does that,
Yeah.
the fragrance? Yeah, I was going to ask you about that as well.
Yeah, so we also have spritzer bottles, right? So the 2-color or the dual color bottles, these work at the DNA level. They work at a really deep level. When you bathe in them, you may or may not notice something different or spontaneous. You may have tears, you may not experience anything, but then a couple days later, you'll have some kind of event that's kind of related, right? And then at the auric level, or this level that we're at here, we have spritzer bottles. So this, for example, is called the Buddha bottle. And the Buddha bottle, so maybe you're going into a meeting, you're concerned about how this conversation is going to play out. So a couple of sprays, and then you just ingest the fragrance. And I spray that for everybody here too, because it works etherically. And then you'll just notice that your vibration will be uplifted, right? So the Buddha bottle is all about like everything's okay. We're all supported all the time, right? So you can imagine Buddha sitting under the tree.
Love that visual. That's fantastic. So how important is education to you? Because I know you're constantly learning, constantly growing. How has that been for you as an entrepreneur? Because I love all these different things you keep adding and bringing. And so tell us a little bit, like if you're an entrepreneur today, how important is that piece of it? Because obviously you epitomize that.
Yes, thank you. So, lifelong learner, right? Like, raise your hand. Kai, I think you're a lifelong learner. Yeah, right. So, I'm not sure where that gene comes from, but once I recognized that I am a lifelong learner, there was some acceptance around that. And then it became easier to be open to new things that would support my personal development and moving forward. I think as entrepreneurs, it's just imperative, right, that we keep growing and learning, stretching and reaching, being open to hearing new ideas, new things, talking to new people. And the challenge, right, is to then stay focused and bring it into execution, right? So then having a team of people that support you around your execution, I think, is very important. And I would say trust the process of what you're drawn to. What works for some people is not going to work for other people around, how you're going to move forward. So for example, right, color mirrors is, a system that a lot of people haven't heard about, but it's brought huge change to my life. So it's been transformative for me, right, in being able to, as an empty nester, create new dreams and new goals for myself to keep moving forward. And so I'm continually reaching to understand where is that next threshold. And so for me, that's really around growing other people, right? Just like you're doing today by bringing me on your show. So thank you.
Yeah, I know. I love that stuff. And I love learning. I sometimes pay for too many courses, especially because now we're on lockdown where I need like 8 hours a day just to do all the coursework I want to do on leadership and social media and you name it. So kind of in closing, because we only have a few minutes left, I know you're intuitive and did some pivots during COVID. And it's the year of the tiger and all that stuff. What if you were to, maybe talk a little bit about what we can expect this year? I'm using your intuitiveness, if you can share with us a little bit. What do we expect on tap for entrepreneurs moving forward through 2022?
Ooh, I like that. So I would say this is the year to dive in and begin to really solidify the changes that you're looking forward to making happen. So just like you talked about, right? We have all these options in front of us to do this, do that. So it's time as COVID and the pandemic and the lockdown kind of come to, a slow closure, that as we're getting back out into the world, that we're focused on what we want to execute and that will bring ourselves forward in our business. I would say have your system in play by the fall for sure, middle of summer, fall. Have your system ready to go so that you know the results that you're creating as you move into the fall, and that those results are sustainable for you and they're replicable.
Absolutely. I think focus is a big thing, especially since we've had some free time to dive into things. So as we open up a little bit, we need to focus more because you're going to have less time, right?
Yes, exactly. We're going to be putting the feet to the ground and getting out there and making more things happen, right? Whether it's out there or having more phone calls, right? Just being more focused about how we're spending that time.
I love it.
Not so much Netflix binging any longer.
Dang it. Um, so again, if people want to engage with you, what's the best way to maybe do that if they want to continue this conversation? Maybe they want a reading, talk about optimal health. What's the best way for them to engage with you?
Yeah, it's really to go to that website that you see on the screen and hit the click button, sign up. You'll get a free gift called Awakening Along the Journey. It's all about how you can stay focused and empowered along your journey. And then I'll reach out to you.
Appreciate that. So I do want to say thank you so much for being on the show today. That went super fast. It always does. And just appreciate you being here today.
Thank you, Kai. I find you to be a true treasure. Thank you.
Well, everyone, I just appreciate for those of you who watch us live or check us out on the replay. This has just been on my heart for a long time to introduce people that I trust, that I know, that I've known for years, introduce those people to my tribe. And we're really what our goal is all about with On the Fly with Kai is just to be able to have candid conversations that can help, shave time off your learning curve as an entrepreneur. So we bring to you every week tips, tricks, and hacks for entrepreneurs. And so we'll see you in next week live, or if you're watching on the replay, we appreciate it on YouTube or Facebook. But we'll see you here next week, 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time on Thursday for another great edition. Thanks again, Lana.
All right. Bye, Kai.